Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Rachel Sampson, the Strategic Partnerships Director of Visual Communications. Thank you for spending your time with us here at C3 Converse presented by Nielsen. I'm zooming in from my family working space slash kindergarten slash preschool, a home classroom in Long Beach. I want to acknowledge and uplift the Tongva and Kizh Nations, the original stewards of this land. We'd like to thank our generous sponsors who have supported visual communications and to all of our partners who made the 36th annual LA Asian Pacific Film Festival possible. Thank you especially to the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, Sony Pictures Entertainment, Comcast NBC Universal, California Arts Council, SAG-AFTRA Producers Industry Advancement and Cooperative Fund, the National Endowment for the Arts, HBO, and Warner Media. If you don't already know, VC has launched our VC50 campaign. Visual Communications is celebrating 50 years this year. If you feel compelled to do so, please donate to vcmedia.org/donate to allow us to continue to support our artist programs. Now I'd like to welcome Melanie Ramos. Melanie Ramos is a Los Angeles-based filmmaker. This is her 4th year as an LAAPFF features programmer. She is an alumni filmmaker of the festival with her shorts films Deliver Her and Limboland. Please welcome Melanie Ramos.
I'm Melanie Ramos. I'm zooming in from Elk Grove, California, the land of the Miwok people. And we're gonna start our artist conversation. Here with us is our guest, Baljit Sangra. Baljit is a Vancouver-based filmmaker who uses documentary and factual entertainment to explore social and cross-culture issues. A 3-time Leo Award nominee, Sangra's films have routinely premiered at festivals around the world. Her most recent project is the NFB produced feature documentary, Because We Are Girls, exploring the impact of sexual abuse on a family. She is also an alumni, having a documentary, Warrior Boys, back in 2009. Today, we're going to talk to her about her documentary, Because We Are Girls, a very chilling look at the story of 3 sisters reliving their traumatic experiences as sexual assault victims as they undergo the trial of their abuser. We welcome Baljit. Hello, introduce yourself.
Hi. Sorry.
So let's just start from the beginning. So I wanted to talk about how you came across this story. Like, when in time did you come across, did you hear about the case, or did you know the subjects that you were going to interview in this documentary?
Okay, so I actually knew the subjects in the documentary. I knew one of the girls is a friend of mine, and then I met her sister. We were friends for quite a while, and when I did Warrior Boys, actually, she came out to the screening and we went for lunch, and she's like, have you ever considered, doing a film on sexual abuse in the South Asian community? And I'm like, well, that's a big topic. Like, how would I do that? What would my access be? And then she disclosed to me that she and her sisters were survivors of sexual abuse. And that it had come out, and they had gone to the police. They didn't tell their parents at the time they had gone to the police, but yeah, they felt they had no choice. And anyways, from the time they told the police and to the time, it got investigated, sent up to the Crown, it took years. So she would just keep me informed about what's going on. And when it finally got some momentum that, it had a preliminary trial, then it was going to Supreme Court, definitely I felt there was a film here. And the National Film Board was approached. She was really keen on a documentary, right? That's why she disclosed that to me. And so she spoke to a producer there as well. And he thought I was the perfect fit to direct this film because I'm her friend and we come from the same culture. And I had worked with him before, Selwyn Jacob. Yeah. So that's how it kind of started.
About access to like the subject, like this documentary is so intimate and it's so personal, and the amount of access that you had to the subjects and like really getting kind of in those moments, how did it feel to be, you're pretty much like a fly on the wall, and How did it feel being there during all these moments?
Yeah, no, it was really an amazing journey. It took like 3 years to make the film. There was a lot of delays in their testimony going to court. There's also 1 year we didn't get funding, so I just followed the story on my own with like a camera, and I went up when they were ready to testify. And most of the time it didn't happen because the accused would have say something and it'd get adjourned. So I followed their kind of, to get ready for trial, and then having it not happened, and just staying in a hotel room and just, talking. And, I was a filmmaker, a friend. Yeah, I felt a lot of weight on my shoulders, having that access to the story. Like, I'm there as a friend advocating. These are women coming forward about historical sexual abuse. And, you're also gotta, I feel like I've got to capture this, but sometimes it was hard to, what hat am I wearing? Sometimes it got a bit confusing because I was just by myself for a big chunk of time. Then the funding came in, and so I've already established like a lot of trust, so allowed for vulnerability because I followed the story on my own, and I spent a lot of time with him on my own. So when we were able to, when the funding kicked in again with the film board, and we were able to bring a proper crew and cinematographer and go up there and get a lot of those beautiful shots you see in the film and cinematic moments, there was already like a lot of trust there, I think. Yeah, and I think that's sort of the key, I think, in documentary is to have that link, and I think also coming from the same background and culture helped because I really related to why they felt they had to keep it a secret for so long. They didn't have to explain so much. You could just say one line and I get it. Or if I talked to the parents and they respond in a certain way, I knew like, it meant a lot more than the one line that they may have said. I kind of got it. Yeah.
I wanted to talk about kind of the main themes that you wanted to address in your documentary. So can you talk about what there's so much from like generational kind of disparity of how like immigrants, like the immigrant story, as well as like kind of the child of an immigrant, and then being born a female versus being born a male, and then also the sexual abuse. Like, what did you want to come across the most?
It's a good question. I mean, it changed. You have certain ideas on the board, like this is what it's going to be about, and obviously it changes a lot when you're making a movie. But I definitely wanted to, for me, like kind of how it's their story, obviously, but like it's how you interpret their story. And I spent so much time, so how to weave all these threads together. And I think I really kind of came from a place of like, I thought the film was about love in a way, love for the sisters, like for for them, each other, they supported each other, that sense of sisterhood. And also, the parents, I know that was really hard. I mean, the fact that they even agreed to be part of this documentary and let us film their most vulnerable moment when the girls confront them, for the wrongs of their childhood. Yeah, I mean, even, when you have relationships that, have a lot of trauma or ups and downs, but if you're still sticking it out, there's still a lot of love there, right? It's still a work in progress, but that sort of kind of encapsulating thing, I wanted to really hold everything in sort of a place of love. And yeah, but I mean, if you see with the film, I did set up, the whole immigrant experience coming from India, racism as soon as they arrived, and the parents, family pressures. They were obviously, a lot of their relatives were like, sponsor me, bring me to Canada. And that was sort of a big focus. So they really lost the focus of their kids. And a big theme, is patriarchy, right? The quest for a son. And they've always felt that growing up, there's a line in the film where one of the sisters says, when I was born, my dad didn't come home from the farm for like 2 weeks when he found out he had a girl. So that's kind of a hard thing to, and then when the son does arrive, the father is so jubilant, but that's also the same time trouble arrived in the family with the cousin who lived with them, who later abused them. So yeah, no, patriarchy and how that sort of played out in their lives in a way, like this subservience, you have to be obedient. Maybe that's why they didn't feel they could come forward. And also that was perpetuated in the media. Like they were always watching like these Bollywood movies that really perpetuated, you know, what is, you know, a perfect, the heroine had to be so, you know, pure, virginal, you know, the whole thing. And if that was sort of questioned, you know, what would happen to the main character? And in those films back in the, I'm sure even now, it was bad, you know, they would kill themselves or something would happen. So they grew up watching that too, and that only reinforced again, you know, we can't say anything or do anything. Yeah. So, and each sister kind of has a different journey in a way. You know, the oldest one came as an older child, right? So it was harder to integrate, you know, with English being, you know, as a second language and coming in. And then the other, and sort of, and then how she kind of handled, uh, she talks about how the abuse impacted her life. It all impacted their lives a little differently and the choices they made. So I think that's really important too, you know, sometimes you don't know why people do what they do, but you know, everybody's got a story, and secrets and lies, it sort of impacts the choices or what you do with your life. And that sort of comes out in the film through the different sisters and the paths they take. Yeah.
Again, it was each story definitely was so different, but it was so, because they're all coming from the same place, the same family, and they experienced almost the same thing, but the way that they dealt with their traumas was very different. And I thought like your depiction of each person's story was very intimate and personal. I wanted to kind of talk about, sorry again, the most hard-hitting moment in the film is the kind of where they again, or like they just tell their parents how they feel and what happened and what they kind of want from them. And it was this very strong, very powerful. And again, you were there like a fly in the wall, so close. And kind of want to talk about like the difference in their generations of how the parents were in denial and how the kids are just like openly like talking about it. And it was like, you know, it's like almost hitting a brick wall. These people just talking, the kids talking, and the parents just kind of hearing but not hearing. How did it feel, or like what was it like in that moment, and what did you want to like really show the audience?
Well, filming it was super intense. I was behind the camera when it really climaxed, like, you know, the emotion just going higher and higher and higher. And yeah, I was crying actually behind the camera. But you know, you're also, you know, you got to capture this. It was very emotional for sure. And it kind of, when we filmed it, it was almost near the end of our filming. You know, the next was going to be the verdict. So their emotions were already running high. They had gone through this arduous court process, and you know, their parents didn't. They felt their parents didn't support them. They didn't come up there, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, emotions were running high, and I think like in that scene, the parents are conflicted. I mean, I think in their mind they felt that they did the best that they could do, you know, and they were kind of holding on to that. Like the dad's like, on one hand, he was like, yeah, of course, I think you're brave for what you did. But then he'll say, you know, and another line is like, well, you know, you have a responsibility too. And those are kind of, you know, opposites. So yeah, you know, and it's from that generation, I guess. I don't know. I mean, he's trying to understand and listen to them, but at the same point, you know, I feel he felt in the circumstances is the best he could have done. And yeah, and the mom just feels like she wished she could have done more, but I don't think they just didn't have the skills, or they weren't equipped, or there was just too much going on, you know, in the family, you know, and they were really young too when they had all their children. You can just imagine, you know, one of the sisters talks about, you know, growing up, there's at least like 15, 16 people living in our household, and everybody was allowed to, you know, discipline us or do whatever, right? So, you know, the immigrant experience, paying your bills, sponsoring your family, you bought these kids. Yeah, and I think now she just wished she could have done something, but at the time, and the sister confronts her when there's a line where she's like, I did tell you, and you just told me to shut up, or, you know, no one's gonna marry us. So, you know, cut to like 20 years later, here we are in the living room, and there's so much from the past that's been unresolved. Yeah. And, you know, I think a lot of people can relate to that, because sometimes you're saying something to, say, your parents or that generation, and they can only understand so much. And sometimes they hold true to, like, I did the best I could, but, you know, I'm sorry. And then maybe have some conflicting views. It's not that, like, life is just not that simple, right? We couldn't have just, you know, life doesn't really just resolve like a movie, you know, like a narrative, everybody hugs and, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And, you know, I shouldn't, like, it didn't, that's real life. And, you know, it's a work in progress. Like, the relationships are a work in progress, but the girls have said that, you know, they have a better relationship with their parents, and their father, you know, looks them in the eyes now. And yeah.
Point, like, very weird that he couldn't look them in the eye, because he just felt that shame, or he didn't see them at all. Like, he just didn't want to see them. And that was like, I don't know, I just didn't know how to feel about it. Like, I've never seen a father not want to look at his children before. Talk about how the film has impacted your community, or the Southeast Asian kind of Canadian American community. How, because we were just talking about it earlier, about how you had screenings, and all the conversations that we're having had before, after that.
Yeah, no, the response has been really positive. Yeah, it's, you know, when you see it live with people, you could really feel the energy in the room. And, you know, there was moments I would look at the audience and they're crying. And after the Q&A, you know, I guess because emotions were high, people shared sometimes their own story, or saying that I can relate because this happened to me, or, yeah, so that was really amazing that happened. So it was really supportive. And, you know, touched people in different ways, you know. Some people got really frustrated with the whole, like, criminal process, like, this is so unjust, that, you know, this is what's asked of survivors of sexual abuse. It's, you know, really tough. And they're kind of really outraged that how long it took, and sort of what was happening at the end. No, the response has been good, but when we showed it also, like, in exclusive, like, Asian audiences, it's been a different response. It's actually been even more emotional. Lots of tears, and people coming up to us after, like, this is our story, but when we came out, we were ostracized. They chose the abuser over us, and, you know, ostracized us out of the family. Like, I've heard a lot of that. Men also had reached out and said, you know, this is something that I've never talked about, you know, but I think it's really hard for men in our community to come forward or share that, you know, they hold that even tighter. So that, it's been very emotional for sure, and supportive. And it's just a conversation we need to have. So I've seen people come for a couple screenings and bring their family, like, come once with girlfriends and then later come with their, like, mom and daughter and, you know, husband, just to have this kind of conversation. And I remember at the opening night when we opened in Vancouver, a lot of senior women came up to me, you know, they had come to the, and I didn't know them, but after, they gave me, like, the biggest hug, and they were crying. So I kind of felt like this is a story that they may have experienced, but there's no way they could have ever said anything. You know, and just the fact that, you know, women have a voice and they were able to break that silence, I think it kind of hit many generations. And it's just a topic, sadly, we just don't talk about, especially with the older generations. I mean, I think a lot of parents have that chat now with their children, you know, about good touch, bad touch, talk, you know, if something like this happens, like, all of that, you know, they talk a bit about in schools, and there's more, I don't know, they're just more, you know, they just wouldn't leave their kids, you know, at every relative's house and stuff, you know what I mean? Like, or drop you off at the temple and come get you out. Like, think now about safety and things like that. That's something that was, like, not before, for sure. The parents didn't really, I felt like didn't feel that way. Where younger people now are having these conversations with their kids. But yeah, the multi-generational vibe of it I don't know, that really touched my heart, especially, you know, when certain women came up to me, you could just feel that this was like their story too. And it just never was able to be out there, or brought back memories or whatever. Yeah, it's been positive.
It's a conversation opener for sure. Like after watching it, I also thought you were just talking about like when you have kids, you know, do I just drop them off at my like, you know, parent or cousin's house? It's like I don't know anymore. And then teaching them what's good, what's bad, and just trying to feel safe where your kids are, especially, you know, you want to believe that your family is good, but you know, you want to keep them safe no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to just talk about your career as a whole. We're talking about you did a film, Warrior Boys, in like a few years ago,
Yeah.
and then how kind of the perspective had changed. That movie was about like a full kind of male perspective, and now you changed over to a female perspective. How was that different? The different experiences going from, you know, Warrior Boys to Because
Right.
We Were
Yeah.
Girls.
Well, that was in my first documentary. But again, I think a lot of just motivation and my approach is still the same. Like I just want to understand, and I'm coming at it from a point of like having more understanding and compassion, you know, and breaking down stereotypes. So that was really like I came in with that, even with Warrior Boys, because there was a lot of, still is a lot of, you know, gang-related youth deaths in the South Asian community here in the Lower Mainland in Vancouver. And I mean, when I did that movie, like, you know, 10 years ago, there was like 100 and something deaths. Now it's well over, way over. So, and the way it was being portrayed in the media was really, you know, stereotypes about, yeah, just like, who are these kids? Be scared, you know, like it was just too much, you know? And my whole approach was like, well, you know, why do these kids feel so alienated that this would be an out for them? You know, because these kids, it's not boys in the hood. These are boys in the suburbs kind of vibe, right? And you go to those communities that you guys got big houses and nice new schools. You're in the suburbs, like why so much alienation? And there's so many, like, say, South Asians in your high school. Like, say, from my experience, you know, I grew up more as a minority in my school situation, right? Like, now, you know, a lot of South Asian kids can go to schools where they're almost like the majority. So I'm like, I don't understand. So I kind of came with like, I just want to know that kind of and I just, luckily I had a friend of mine was a vice principal of a school, and he gave me access. So I just started first by talking to a lot of kids who are in and out of the principal's office, you know, and just asking like questions like, you know, where they live, who do they live with, you know, do you like, what's your like routines like? And you know, you started seeing themes like a lot of the kids didn't have a lot of FaceTime with their dads, or you know, there's just a lot of other stuff going on at home, you know, or they're being bullied and that's why they gravitated to that. But the way I think my approach was kind of coming from definitely more trying to get more understanding and compassion. And I think that's why that film did well. Like in terms of being played in so many communities, you can just relate to that sense of alienation and feeling disconnected and self-esteem and all of that. So that was, you know, and I did a couple more docs in the middle. And then I think with, Because We're Girls, I was able to relate more to the story because they also are my friends. And when we're making the film, there's so much was going on globally, you know, Me Too, Time's Up, Women's March. So you're seeing a lot of this in the mainstream media as well, like, and a lot of essays around this, and articles. So I really felt like we were part of a movement, really, because if you can get through and get some convictions, it sort of helps. And could be a precedent-setting case. And since so few cases actually make it that far, we really felt the importance of it, you know. the greater good. So I know like so many times they felt really like this is so hard to do and you want to give up, but luckily, you know, they had each other, so they're able to support each other, you know, to keep going. But witnessing that from the outside, I really got a sense of, you know, how hard this journey is for women and what changes even need to be made in the justice system, you know. Doesn't really serve survivors of sexual abuse at all, or victims. So yeah, but I think my approach is always the same. I mean, I hope like I'm not trying to fit something in a box. I just kind of want to find out and have understanding and compassion, and then I think it's just relatable to everybody. You know, they say personal is universal. So keep the story as personal as possible, and it will be universal. Yeah.
Talk about the court case, and then so when you're watching the film, you don't get access to
No.
being in the court. We just got kind of the after or in the mid, like during a break. Were you in the court at the time? Did you like
Oh
sit
yeah, I
through
was in
there?
the court. Yeah, in Canada you can't film in the courts. Like, just you're not allowed. But you know, it's open to the public, right? Because it's a court. So I would sit and listen. Yeah, and now obviously with the sisters, unless you had testified and were cross-examined, then you could sit. And until then, they couldn't even sit on each other because that would just be a mess of information, right? So that was kind of hard for them too. You have to really be careful of not to share or say anything because that could compromise your case. But yeah, no, I sat there, and when we filmed the final judgment, like the whole crew sat there. And you know, this is in Williams Lake. It's a northern BC town. There wasn't that many people in the courtroom. So behind the girls, you saw like the whole crew. Like we couldn't film. This is going on. So we were there, just you know, holding each other's hand and being supportive. The deliberation took like the whole day. It went up and down and up and down, and yeah, we're thinking, oh my God, it's not going in the right direction. Oh, it's hopeful. Oh no, it was kind of like that the whole day. But we were all there and shared that experience together. Yeah.
Mostly the sister's perspective. Did you ever feel like you wanted to get the other side and tell the other side of the story just for any piece of it?
I had a little bit of because the abuser is her cousin, so he was in some of the archive material, but we just thought it's just best to take it out. I mean, because he lived there and everything, legally too, but also we didn't want the whole film to be about what was your relation to him, or what, you know, what did he do to you, or everything about him. Do you know what I'm saying? So much of that is done, and he's had so much space in their life, and it's always been about him in a way. You know, he was able to continuously abuse in this family, right? And yeah, and with no real repercussions at all until like 20, 30 years later, you know, he sees these girls in court. But yeah, no, it didn't need to be there, to be honest. I had a little bit, but then it was like, why? And like I said, he's dominated like the whole court proceeding is about him. Everything is about him. Yeah, I didn't want to make this film about, you know, their relation to him. You know, it's about their family, their sisterhood, their trials and tribulations. Yeah, things like immigrant experience, race, like all these things that affect all of us. Yeah, those kind of things, so we can have a conversation. I don't think it needed to be about him, to be honest. I mean, I did see him obviously in court, and I saw his family that came to support him, but no, yeah, we just felt it wasn't needed.
The film, you also included the daughters, which I find funny. It was they all had daughters. Like the next generation was all girls, and kind of how they're kind of dealing with their traumas and kind of their daughters or their relationship with their daughters. Can you talk about how you kind of want to portray that relationship, or if that was important to your documentary? Do you think
Yeah,
it
that
was?
was important. Like the oldest sister's daughter, you know, as soon as we started, yeah, I interviewed her, she started crying like so quick. So obviously she was holding on to a lot of stuff for a long time. But, you know, one thing that she said that always stuck with me is now I know why my mom was the way she was. Like, I couldn't understand why she had so much anger and, you know, say depression. And now the secrets come out, you have more compassion, right? And empathy, right? If you're a kid and you don't understand why, you know, her mom was going through a lot of emotional stuff. Now you know as an adult, so that can help heal, right? And have a better relationship. And then with the younger two, similar, like they portrayed, I just want to use, like, I didn't want to interview them or anything like that. You know, we just had them in really sort of within the family setting. You know, you get the vibe that the sisters are doing it for the next generation. And also sometimes the way we shot it could touch almost on like what it was like it could be them in a way, but that wasn't intentional. Like, you know, when the young daughter is putting all these adornments and, you know, the sisters had talked about Bollywood and dressing up, and then, you know, the voiceover is just about growing up female. So, you know, and so I was able to capture the daughters that way. But yeah, definitely the family. You sense a matriarchal vibe there, right? The way they were sitting around and talking about dating with the next generation or sharing experiences. I thought that was important. And there was a scene too where one of the middle daughter, she was really young. Like, this is early on in the filmmaking. I think she was like 15. But one of the aunts says to her, now that she knows this, when I was going through all my depression, it impacted my relationship with you. Now that the daughter knows, and then she sees the bigger picture, you know, like sometimes our trauma can impact our relationships or our choices. And now when a secret's out, you could like totally talk about it and people could have better understanding. And so you saw a bit of that in the film, you know, now that that daughter or that niece knows, you know, that aunt is able to say, you know, maybe that, you know, I apologize. You probably didn't understand why I was going through what I was going through, you know, now you know. I think that's all kind of really important.
How your subjects, how did they watch the whole thing? How did they react to the film?
Yeah, it was positive. I was really worried about the parents, to be honest. When we showed it to the parents, I went over to their house, and I think two sisters were there, the parents, and I just kept looking over at them, you know, but they were fine at the end, you know. We all had a big hug, and you know, and you know, and the father's like, you know, this is not just particular to my family, but this is a struggle for so many families. And I think he felt that kind of came through in the film, you know, that it was very relatable, and this happens, you know, and this is like how a family is trying to deal with it, and that hopefully it could help other people. So yeah, he kind of touched on that after that screening. So I thought that was good. And they came to the opening in Vancouver. Like, we opened a festival here at Doxa, and yeah, they were acknowledged in the audience, and they got a standing ovation. So that was good. They haven't come to any screenings since, but
I was gonna say,
you know, we acknowledge that, you know, it was tough. Everybody, I think, they applauded that they're, you know, that they stuck it out and they participated, and, you know, they were honest, and that, you know, people responded to that. So I thought that was good.
about how the reaction or the impact it has on the audience, and how your story is Southeast Asian, but it speaks to its cross culture. Like like a lot of Asian cultures feel like their parents definitely feel that kind of denial and shame, but it also reaches to everybody everywhere. You want to talk about how that's impacted, or have you, like, what your feedback was from other people about that?
Oh yeah, no, it's been just super positive. I mean, so many of the themes, so many people can relate to, right? And like I said, you know, I just wanted, it was sort of, it's their story, but it's like my interpretation of their story, right? Like, you know, you spend all this time with people and you see what's going on, and you have, you talk to them, you get their backstory, and then, you know, you just sort of weave it together, you know, because you know, as if you do documentary, you have like a lot of footage and a lot of stuff, and sometimes there's a really amazing stuff, but you're like, does it serve the story, you know? know. So because like a lot of themes are touched and it's people can really relate to the story, the family or the kids, or um, overcoming a struggle, breaking one's silence, not feeling heard, feeling alone, all of that. So I think that because it's so relatable, it's got touches on all those emotions, but it's also got a lot of fun moments too, right? Like, it's not all trauma. I think it's really important in the doc, to have lightness next, and darkness, but you can't just have all one, right? And they're not just defined by their trauma, right? There was like a lot of fun moments. They're laughing, they're dancing, they're sharing memories, having fun conversations with the next generation. I mean, all of that kind of stuff is really important too. And there was a theme, a little thread in the film. One of the sisters touches on that. There was a lot of trauma going on at home, but what saved me was dance, and sort of that escape of that. And they would do that, so I thought that was a really important element. So weave in it too, and you see them kind of celebrating also at the end of the film.
Yeah, I like that part at the end. I was like, oh, I felt like that was an added part. I don't know if I caught that the first time, but then the second time around when I saw it, it definitely brought that kind of like lightness to the like dark subject matter. You were talking about stuff that you kind of took out of the film or didn't add to the film. What stuff that you thought was important, but you just didn't think it was important to the story that you had to take out?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, you just kind of get some beats with some characters, and then there might have some really raw moments. But I mean, how many of those do you need to put in them, in the film? Sometimes they're really good, or they're in court, and there was a real emotional moment with a particular sister. But as we were putting the film together, it just didn't fit anymore. We already sort of turned a corner, you know. So stuff like that. Yeah, I think sometimes you get like all this access. Because I did have a lot of access, so sometimes you have a lot of really very interesting material. But as we were editing, the film just grew. Initially like uh, um, when one of the characters, was keen about making the film, Giti, like it was more, she saw it more as her story. But as I got involved in the filming and everything like that, it became, because we're girls, like equal, and so that really changed. And then the family and the father and the brother, like it just got bigger. But I thought all those points of views were important, and the next generation. So I think weaving all of that in, I mean, and still having the themes and everything, but it makes it kind of relatable. Like you could come to the film and you might relate with the daughters, or you might relate with the sisters, or as a parent, you might relate and go, if this was my situation, I would have done exactly what the parents did. But I've asked friends, after people have conversations, what do you think would happen, if you were to come forward? And they're all like, no, yeah, probably like the same, like the parents, it would be like that. They would just shut it down, put it under the carpet and keep it moving. So it's pretty accurate. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, a lot of, I think it's finding out balance in a film. You can get a lot of, emotional moments. I had a scene where the sisters were, fighting with each other because it gets so tense too, right? The court procedures and all of that, the impact on your life, but it didn't really serve the story.
Sorry, my headphones just. Um, um,
Oh, I should also say too, like I wanted it to, even though it's a documentary, I think like I also wanted it to be really watchable. I'm not saying I tried to water down things, but I was also influenced by like narrative films and stuff like that too. Um, yeah, two films that really stood out for me was like uh, Stories We Tell, is a documentary by Sarah Polley. There's a lot of reenactments, and it's just sort of secrets and lies and stories we tell. Just watch that, and yeah. I mean, I don't know if you see that, but I was inspired by that documentary for sure. And another one I would say is Monsoon Wedding. They dealt with some really difficult subjects, but there was a lot of lightness in the movie too, and darkness. Sexual abuse and one of the girls feeling not going to be believed, and she's stands up to stop the abuse happening to the next generation.
Mhm.
So I was really inspired by how Mira wove that in too. Makes it approachable, right? This film, like, yeah, I don't think you could watch a film that's wall-to-wall trauma, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It'd be hard for me to make that.
Yeah, I think you found light in a lot of sections.
You need light, yeah.
Starting to like get really intense, and I was like, I just need to breathe for a second.
Totally.
And again, those sisters, they they like to laugh with each other, and that kind of helped kind of soothe that kind of those traumatic moments.
Mm-hmm.
This goes out to anybody who's watching. If you guys have any questions, feel free to add it in the chat, and I could ask your questions if you have any of those. Let me say, is there a film that, or another story that you want to kind of document next, or another story that you want to tell narratively next?
Yeah, I'm kind of working on. I'm working on this. I don't know. I say kind of. I'm working on a script, an outline, and starting the script. It's sort of a coming of age story, similar to like the time frame of in this film. Yeah, like, well, immigrant family living, coming in the 70s and sort of trials and tribulations and different points of views, but in a narrative vibe. Yeah,
Nice.
with some light moments and also some challenges. But I think, as I'm a South Asian from Vancouver, I'm like third generation, and we're just so missing out there in terms of representation in our stories. And when you see like Canadian narratives, I would say like 80% are white, if not more. And it's often, I don't know, I just feel like it's like often, similar stories or the same story. So, we just, I don't know, I think it's like, I want to add to that, in a narrative vibe, and there's a wealth because we have such a long history here and so many stories, but we're just so missing in action. So I want to definitely give voice to some of those stories. And I've done some other small other documentaries. I did one on assisted living, South Asians and assisted living, and one on hockey, South Asians. It was part of a series. You can always make a film on hockey in Canada. But, a lot of immigrants, excelling at hockey and what that's like in such a white-dominated, field, and trying to get it up to the NHL. So, and I did some shorts, again, looking at little nuggets of history here, South Asian stories. So just even doing the research on those, and, some are commissioned, and it's just been amazing. You just really realize there's just a treasure trove of stories, but we need to get it out there.
Exactly.
As a community, I don't think we've really been documenting our experience at all out there. A lot of it's just oral or some photos, and there's just thank God for archivists out there, or academics, or doing research, and they kind of find all these things and put it together, or do oral histories and stuff like that. But there's a lot of work to be done for sure.
Yeah, I for sure didn't know that there was such a big Southeast Asian community in Canada at all. So this film really kind of brought that to life. And then again, looking back at your other stuff, I was like, wow, I didn't realize how kind of youth gang deaths was a big thing there as well, or gangs in general in Southeast Asian communities. I didn't realize that was such a big thing. So thank you for kind of informing us.
It's a huge, sadly, it hasn't really gone down. It's there's sometimes they'll try to throw money at it or crime prevention, but they just haven't I don't think, maybe, through the arts, or reaching out to kids through the arts, or some sort of a wraparound program, right? Why are kids feeling, disconnected and alienated, not valued, looking at programs from that point of view, rather than, doing PSAs and try to scare kids straight and throw money at that. I think that's kind of silly. And the most impressionable, where you really need programs to support kids and boost self-esteem is when they're really young, right? It's kind of hard to turn somebody away from that life, you know, at 18, 19. But you can impact choices at a young age for sure.
Let's see. So what is the biggest thing you want your audience to take away from watching Because We Are Girls?
Have more conversation. It's a difficult topic. We need to have these conversations and take the shame and blame off of it, you know, have that understanding, you know, I mean, yeah, sadly, you know, abusers or the perpetrators, you know, use that. They know that you're going to be silent. That gives them power. They know nobody's going to come out about this, or, you know, it's going to get shut down, or they're going to blame you or say you're crazy. Like, how can you change this cycle, right? Like, how do we stop this? We need more dialogue. We need conversations. We need more education. We need to find out what services are available. So often when we've had screenings, we had people in the community that provide services, you know, like rape relief and assault, transition houses, and just people, like services that are available, right? So people know that, you know, I could call, there's support lines, there's support out there for me. I think that's really important. And I think, yeah, like a lot of people have, yeah, come forward, shared this story. And I've seen even in the South Asian community, like a lot more conversations. You know, I've been invited to be on podcasts where they're really looking at sexual abuse in the South Asian community and doing multiple podcasts about that. Or, you know, one woman started this IG, Instagram account where women can anonymously tell their stories, just to put it out there, like, you know, not putting a name to it, but giving voice at least to their story, right? So I'm just seeing a lot of things coming up, you know, more dialogue, yeah, to move the needle on this. And yeah, I would just like to get more men involved. I don't know, like, that's how we could really change things, right? You know,
Yeah.
Can't just be women, it's got to be both, right? So every time I see a screening, and if we were playing, you know, we luckily we had a little run in Vancouver, like 8 screenings at a small theater. And I would just say, you know, this is not just for girls. Yeah, it's called Because We're Girls, you know. Bring your brothers out, bring your partners out. Let's bring the men out. They need to be part of this conversation, right? Definitely.
Awesome. Where can we see more of your stuff, more of your work? You want to look at more of your documentaries, your past documentaries, or where we could see more of your stuff?
Yeah, well, you can, I have a website, vivamantra.ca. You can go there. You can follow me on social media. And also, like, Warrior Boys is, well, it was produced by the National Film Board too, so that would definitely be on the web. You could totally find it. Probably illegally pirated on YouTube, but it's there. But go to the NFB site and see it there. Yeah, and a couple others I've directed and for TV, but they just haven't been out yet because I don't have those rights. But yeah, no, I'll definitely post that on my website for sure. Yeah, one's called Many Rivers Home, that I'm really proud about too. I won some awards. And again, yeah, that was like, I wanted to get her stories, and I thought, let's go to an assisted living that caters to South Asians. And I wanted, and it was like, the working title was called Golden Girls, and that's kind of what I wanted, but it didn't turn out that way. It was, yeah, a lot, just a lot hard. The residents were going through a lot more. I just imagined it, you know, it'd be a bit more fun, but no. There was beautiful moments, but they all kind of came there for various reasons. And there's a real stigma in the South Asian community too for having your parent in care, right? Assisted living, because then as soon as you're there, the residents would say, people are like, oh, you know, are you not talking to your children, or is there a problem? But you know, not everybody could live with their kids. They don't want to sometimes, you know. But anyways, I explore a lot of that in Many Rivers Home. So, and able to tell the diasporic history, because you have residents that come from like all over, right? From Africa and India and Fiji and like the Trinidad, and they end up at this assisted living, you know, so it's a lot of cool, you know, stories that I could touch on because they live together and share a new experience together. So yeah, just yeah, it's kind of been what I've been doing. But you can just definitely, I would go to the website, and a couple of them are definitely online for sure.
So, and then we look forward to your narrative film, hopefully soon. That's all the time that we have today for, let's see, what was I gonna say? Thank you for joining us, Baljit. And then don't forget, this film, Because We Are Girls, is still available now to watch on our site. If you haven't watched it yet, go watch it. If you have watched it, watch it again with family members, friends. The viewing window closes Sunday night. Tell a friend. If you enjoyed this conversation and the festival lineup, please consider donating to Visual Communications. Your support will help sustain our year-round operations and programming. Go to vcmedia.org for more information. Please stick around for the next event, Nap Time with Ryan, a unique group energy healing just for our LAAPFF fam. Sounds super interesting. Stay for Nap Time with Ryan. For more most recent updates on the festival, please visit festival.vcmedia.org or follow us on our social media accounts at VC Film Festival. And don't forget to include the hashtag LAAPFF 2020. And that's it for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Melanie.
Bye.